Hello and welcome to the Jefferson Madrix podcast, the pod on a mission to normalise 8-team fantasy leagues. I'm Pete, and as always, I'm joined by the cantankerous duo of Ian and H.
Good evening.
Well, I'm not sure I agree with that, but yeah, go on.
I don't even know what it means. I'm just going to move on.
I'm gonna find a new adjective every week for the pair of you.
Fantastic.
It's argumentative, H. So, and I got that because Ian's got we'll get to it in a bit, but I think Ian's got a little bee in his bonnet about CJ Stroud, which I can't wait until that comes up. So on this episode, this is the first of our division summary episodes. We're going to go through across the next month or so. We are going to go through all 8 divisions, one at a time, 15 minutes on each team, and basically just do a bit of summary of where they finished last year, where they're looking at finishing this year, and some of the key fantasy assets. Anything to add to that, lads, before we jump in?
No, let's get straight on it.
Right, let's get in.
A quick apology from
No one cares about your apology, H. Nice one.
So we're starting with the AFC South, and we sat down and we all discussed it at great length as to where we should go first, which division we should do, which team we should do first. And H just sat in the corner going, Texans, over and over again. So we bowed to peer pressure.
highly. I did not even get involved with the conversation, so it's on YouTube.
We're starting with the AFC South. First up is the Texans, who last year won the AFC South with a 10-7 record. Went on to beat the Browns at NRG 45-14 in the wildcard game before losing to the Ravens 34-10 in the divisional rounds. The bookies have got them at over and under of 9.5 wins this year, which feels a bit low, but the odds do lean overs. They are the division favourites at 11-10. Significance ins, Joe Mixon from the Bengals and Stephon Diggs from the Bills, and significant outs. The only one I could think of was Devin Singletary, if you call that significant. The early ADPs, we've got these from Sleeper and full PPR redraft ADPs. We've got Stroud is the QB5. Mixon's RB 15, Diggs is wide receiver 14, Collins is wide receiver 15, and Tank Dell is wide receiver 25. That's 3 wide receivers in the top 25, and Schultz is tight end 14. I think the only place to start is with you, H. How do you feel about your Texans going into 2024?
Very happy. I think the squad's there to make a big jump. The season itself is more difficult than what it was last year, so that's probably why the 10 wins is roughly where the bookies have us. So just on our schedule, we play 3 of the 4 championship teams, and 11 of our 14 opponents this year had winning records last year, and I know it's last year and everything like that. The only thing that I will say is I think the scheduling has actually been kind of kind to us as well, because we play, I think, 3 rookie quarterbacks in the first 6 games. We play the Colts, Bills, and Jags, which will be sort of the tougher games there. But
it's not been that kind to you. You're starting 0-1, so that's a bit of a break from the first go.
But I think in terms of the Texans, the squad's there this year to really push on, and it'd be interesting to see how they get on, I suppose. But yeah, are we going into ADPs now, or do you two want to go?
Well, I was going to say, Ian, I'm going to throw it to Ian. How do you feel about Stroud as QB5?
I think it's a bit of a reach. For fantasy anyway. It feels high. On ADPs, I think Mixon at 15 feels low. He was RB5 last year. He's behind a better O-line this year. I think he's at least the top 10 running back this year.
Do you? Okay.
I do. I think Mixon's top 10.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see a top 10 finish, but RB 15 feels about right to me.
It usually does for Mixon. Like even last year when he finished RB5, everyone thought he's about RB 15. He just kind of just kind of goes under the radar, doesn't he?
Was there an element of, I haven't got his stats in front of me, but was there an element of him getting a bit of, a few too many dump offs from backup quarterbacks last year then?
Probably, yeah. Probably. Yeah,
I wonder whether in a full PPR, whether he's going to get as much work in the passing game, because like we just mentioned, they've got 3 top wide receivers there, and CJ Stroud is not the sort to just panic and dump it off, is he? Unless he's specifically told that that's the play and that's what he's got to do. He's looking down the field and he's going to find one of those 3 wide receivers.
No, that is true, but Joe Mixon was also sherry. He gave up quite a few snaps to Chase Brown last year as well. And he's not going to be doing that with Damian Pierce, is he, H? Because Damian Pierce is clearly finished.
Maybe not. Maybe not.
So there's more work for Joe Mixon this year than there was last year. But yeah, last year with the injuries to Burrow and the injuries to Chase, obviously we had to redesign the scheme for Jake Browning, which obviously got Joe Mixon more involved in the passing game, but he's always been involved in the passing game.
I didn't see you being more in on Joe Mixon now he'd left the Bengals and gone to the Texans, but you seem to be, your love for Joe Mixon knows no bounds.
It's mixing the drinks all over again now, isn't it?
Well, I'm never bitter about someone leaving us, to be honest. And I wish him well.
Okay. H, are you going to have Stroud on many teams at QB5?
Nope. I'm just going to be honest. No. I don't know why, especially with fantasy football, I prefer a quarterback that is quite mobile. I've always been that way. Whether it be, I remember last year I took a risk with Dan Jones, and I ended up swapping him out and things like that. But when it got kind of later, I wasn't overly bothered. I think Stroud's going to have a better year. I think obviously with the likes of Diggs being in the receivers, there's more chance of passing touchdowns and things like that. But I'm always, like I said, I'm always wanting a quarterback that rushes a little bit more.
On Stroud, the bookies have got his passing team, and this is all off Bet365. If give them a little bit of a plug.
All the gambling sites are available.
Yeah, until they sponsor the pod, and then no other gambling sites are available. CJ Stroud passing touchdowns over or under 26.5, and for reference, he got 23 last year, having missed a couple of games. So that feels doable. That feels low to me. I'd be tempted, assuming he played all 17 games, I'd be tempted to go over 26.5.
Well, especially if he reckons he's better than Josh Allen.
I wondered how long it was going to take.
Here we go. Here we go.
He's going to have to throw more than 33, isn't he?
Yeah.
Josh Allen threw 33 last year. Go on, H.
Someone that.
Go on, H.
You literally did.
Let's talk about CJ Stroud.
You didn't listen.
Reckoning.
Right.
Actually,
first of all,
you mean Josh Allen from the Jags?
So first of all, you didn't listen to the interview, and it's clear you didn't, because you started chirping on about how because the clickbait was he claimed he's better than Burrow, Herbert, Allen, and Rodgers, which wasn't what he was asked. I'm literally going to spend no more than 30 seconds on this because it's pointless. What he said was, what were the top? The question was, what do you believe was the top 5 quarterbacks in the league last year? He was very complimentary around Herbert. He was very complimentary around Burrow. Says that he watches a lot of their tape and things like that. He did not say he was better than them. He said he had a better season than them. And the only reason he had a better season than Herbert, Burrow, Rodgers was because they were injured. Now, the Josh Allen one, you can argue it. Josh Allen threw 4 times more interceptions than CJ Stroud did last year. So his argument there is that his top 5 quarterbacks were Pat Mahomes and Lamar at 2, and then he said himself, Jalen Hurts and Dak Prescott. All 5 of those were in the MVP race at the end of the year. So
I will argue that Josh Allen was better than Stroud because I've got the stats.
That's fine.
Josh Allen Josh Allen had a 66% completion rate. CJ Stroud had a 64 completion rate. They had the exact same amount of air yards, actually, with 2,533. Josh Allen threw 78 passes, which were considered poor, with 31 drops. CJ Stroud had 94 passes considered poor, with 18 drops.
Just considering these poor.
Yeah, exactly. How do you know it wasn't the wide receiver running the wrong route? This is the thing. You can say all of these. CJ Stroud had a better quarterback rating last year than Josh Allen. See, that's a stat where Stroud wins. He threw less interceptions. I'm not saying CJ Stroud had a better year than Josh Allen. I'm just saying that is what he said. He did not say he's a better quarterback than him. He just said he feels he had a better year than him. There's nothing wrong with believing in yourself.
I'm going to draw a line.
Yeah, exactly. It's a pointless argument. It's a pointless argument because you've not watched the actual interview.
How do we feel about...
Out of interest.
In fantasy, it was Josh Allen, but that doesn't necessarily...
Oh, there you go, right. There we go. Let's move
on. Wide receivers. I cannot believe that any team in the league has got 3 wide receivers going in the top 25 in fantasy ADP. That seems ridiculous to me, which it can only be that nobody really knows. So everyone's got their sort of favorites and they're taking them a bit too high. There is no way that all 3 of those can pay off on those prices.
No. On the receivers, in terms of best ball, they're a great pick because at some point in best ball, those 3 will have outstanding weeks. If I was going to take a chance on any of them in redraft, mine is Nico Collins, because I think with Nico, he's got that relationship with CJ already. Secondly, he's always been a target in the red zone, and I don't think he scored that many touchdowns last year, but he's always been a red zone target. He's 6'4", like he's obviously got a lot of pace.
He's not going to be able to jump.
I would go Nico
pocket now, though, is he? So all that money weighing him down, he's not going to be able to jump as high in the red zone.
Yeah. What's brilliant about
that? They just made him just shows that he's going to be wide receiver 1 this year, regardless of what people might think he takes and how many targets he's going to demand or ask for. It's clearly going to be Nico Collins. Otherwise, they wouldn't have paid him what they paid him.
Yeah. But also with Diggs is on a 1-year contract as well. So, like, there's that. But on Nico's extension, what's actually really clever about it is he was only getting paid something like $2.5 million this year because he's still on his rookie contract. So essentially, what they've done is a 4-year contract for the $75 million. I know it's officially 3 years for 75 or whatever it is, but it's such a smart move to get it done this year because essentially you're spreading the cost out through the 4 years. So Nico Collins and Tank Dell, I would say, are dynasty targets if anyone's starting a dynasty startup as well, because I actually think Nico Collins is going to go on.
Out of the 3 of them, I like Tank Dell, but I don't know whether it's just because he's not costing me as much. Like taking him as the 25th wide receiver off the board. Yeah. And there's something about the way CJ Stroud talks about Tank Dell that makes me think you're going to throw him the ball as much as possible. Like he always mentions him. That thing he did with Micah Parsons, and he was picking his best offense. He was like, he didn't mention Nico Collins, but he did mention Tank Dell. So, and I know there's like positional things in that and other things to remember, but I think the fact that he was the one receiver on his team that he keeps mentioning is one that I kind of think I would lean towards Dell at the cheaper price. But
especially
I think Dell's the lowest risk.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ian, go on, mate.
No, especially in Dynasty. Diggs is, he's 1-year contract. He's 28 now. I'd take Dell for Dynasty. He's 30, yeah. So
I think the thing with Dell is I think the thing with Dell is, and to be fair, Nico Collins, is that they're completely different. So even when, let's say, Diggs does go at the end of this year, those 2 are going to stay there. They're going to. I think there's that kind of relationship where they are completely different receivers. So, in my opinion, especially Dynasty, I'll be taking either one of them. In redraft, I'd probably lean more towards Nico purely because of the touchdowns, because I think he's going to be more of a red zone threat. But I of the three, I'm kind of leaving Diggs out, which is mad, but that's the way I'm leaning.
No, I think that's fair.
I think in one of the best ball drafts that we recently did, I think Diggs fell to maybe like the 7th or 8th round, which seems really low, but there's reasons why.
Yeah, I agree. Before we finish up, Schultz at tight end 14 feels like about right for me because I think he's a good player and he will have his weeks, but we just talked about how many mouths there are to feed there, and I think 14 feels about right. He's got the potential to do more if one of those goes down, but he's probably going to end up about 14, 15 because of the lack of targets, I think.
Yeah, I agree on that.
I completely agree. Completely agree.
So before we move on, Pete, I'd really boringly, I spent a couple of hours this week going through every team's schedule and predicting their win-losses, and then I've even done that for the playoffs. So, H, would you be interested to know what I think the Texans are going to do this season?
Is it better than the 3 wins that you gave us last season?
Much better.
I would guess so.
In that case, yeah, I'll hear it.
Right. So your outlook for the season, based on my predictions, is you're going to go 13-4, win the division, but you're going to lose the wild card round to the Bengals.
Brilliant.
And that is your season outlook.
They're gonna go 13-4. You're not gonna win the division, and then you're gonna go into. Okay. All right. Interesting.
So
I think
Should we move on to the Jags?
High. That's like blowing my mind how high the 13 wins is.
Ian needs to get
let's
10
move it
on the overs.
I know, definitely.
Yeah, your 4 losses. Your four losses, H, are the Colts, the Jets, the Cowboys, and the Jags. They're your 4 losses.
If you're gonna lose, if you're gonna go 13-4, just back them to win the division because you're getting more than even money on winning the division.
We played the Chiefs and the Ravens in back-to-back games in 4 days between them, and you have us beating them.
No,
I think you must have misunderstood how much Ian hates the Ravens and the Chiefs. So when we get to the Ravens and the Chiefs, they're both going 2-15 across the season.
Yeah.
So. Move on to the Jags.
Yeah, just.
I'm waiting for Ian to run a graphic.
I know, yeah.
Which means nothing for those who are listening on the podcast. But if you are watching our YouTube channel, we've got some lovely graphics now. So I'm not moving on until we see them. So the Jags.
For those that were listening, that whooshing noise was me playing the graphic.
Yeah. So in 2023, the Jags finished second. They went 9-8. They blew it against the Titans in the final week to allow the Texans to nip them. They started 8-3 and finished 1-5. So they were doing really well until the last 6 weeks when it all fell apart as it went into December. In 2024, Bet365 have got their over under at 8.5 wins. They are second favourites for the division at 2. Their significant ins, I've got Gabe Davis and Brian Thomas added to the wide receiver room. Their outs, Calvin Ridley, good riddance, and Zay Jones leaving the wide receiver room. The early ADPs, Trevor Lawrence is all the way down at QB 17. Get to that in a minute. Travis Etienne, H's 2023 hero, is RB 10. Christian Kirk is wide receiver 3. Thomas is wide receiver 43. And Gabe Davis is wide receiver 61, with Evan Ingram at tight end 8. Where should we start? How are we feeling about it?
I'll agree with Evan Ingram at 8.
I think Evan Ingram's a little bit underrated.
I do.
He just didn't start well last season, did he? I mean, his first touchdown was because of us and the roulette. Like if it wasn't
Another fan was
that
still
is
taking
true.
credit for that.
if it wasn't because of us and the tight end roulette we did last year, he wouldn't have had anywhere near as good a season as he had.
Well,
I mean, it's true.
I
The
think
roulette, when
I
the
think
roulette
Dave
was
feels like-
hot, it was hot.
Yeah.
I think the thing is, this is the one thing with Evan Ingram. In the last 2 years, he finished as the tight end 2 on the season last year. And the year before, in full PPR, and the year before, he was the tight end 5. And in both years, he got 4 touchdowns. So he's got 8 touchdowns in the last 2 years. And that's the thing with Evan Ingram is it's all like he's one of Trevor Lawrence's favorite targets. And I just kind of feel like if they have a decent run, surely that's going to change at some point. He's going to have a season where he goes 8, 9, 10, 12 touchdowns and just has a bit of a blow up and could easily, with the volume he's been getting, could easily be the top tight end in the league, I think, for fantasy.
Yeah, I mean, I think this could be the year that happens because the receivers they've let go, Calvin Ridley, Zay Jones, I think they are better than the ones they brought in. Which means there's more work for Evan Ingram to do now this year.
Yeah, I disagree.
You think Gabe Davis, because he wears 0, that's the only reason.
Yeah. Well, there's partly that, but I just don't think he's that good anymore. I didn't really see it last year.
He's better than Gabe Davis.
Maybe. Brian Thomas, though, he looked good at LSU.
Brian Thomas he's an unknown in the NFL.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things. Like, if I'm looking at, I'll go on to their receivers. I know that we were talking about Ingram there, but if you look at their receivers, the only one that I'm really going to take a stab at is probably Thomas. I'm not really interested in Kirk. I have absolutely 0 interest in Gabe Davis unless it's best ball. So I would take a risk on Brian Thomas and probably maybe reach a little bit higher depending on what's at the board at that point, because out of them all, he's the one that is the unknown, and as we kind of know, I quite like and sort of watching college football. So I've seen enough of him to go, actually, I'll take a chance on him because I think I do think he'll be quite good. As I've mentioned, also with one of the other players that we're going to come on to on the next team, but I don't see how Kirk or Gabe Davis is worth a pick.
I think Gabe Davis is interesting.
It depends how deep your league is, doesn't it? And it depends your format. I mean, Christian Kirk again would be good for best ball.
Yeah, best ball. The worth of picking best ball, but
out of those
receivers,
the only one I'm really bothered about this year would be Evan Ingram.
I'd take a punt on Ingram, but I was trying to work out the sort of the 7 tight ends that are above him, and it's obviously Kittle, Kelsey, Laporta, McBride, Kyle Pitts. I'm going to assume, Pitts is
Andrews.
at 6-1 acres. Mark Andrews. I'd probably take Ingram over Andrews because with Andrews he's not fit. He's not. When was the last time Andrews played a full season? 3 years ago? 4 years ago?
It was 2 years ago. I think Mark Andrews. I don't know what
definitely didn't because he killed me in 2 leagues.
He was tight end 1 3 years ago.
3 years ago, yeah, that was his last full season. Though he's been injured the last 2 because I've drafted him in leagues in 2 and been massively let down by him.
He were right. Let's get some facts straight. He was injured last year and only played 10 games. Right? In 2022, he played 15 games and finished as the tight end 4 on the year. In 2021, he played a full season and finished as the tight end 1. In 2020, he played 14 games and finished as the tight end 6. In 2019, he played 15 games and finished as the tight end 5. That's 4 straight years where he played at least 14 games and finished at least tight end 6 on the season. There's only last year where he's had an injury, and now you two seem to hate him. So
no, I don't hate him
all the time.
Hang on, Pete.
I
hang on,
don't
Pete.
hate him.
I tried trading for him with you this week, so don't give me that.
Yeah.
You tried to
I don't
get him at a
hate him.
massive discount.
I tried trading for Mark Andrews off you this week. So I'm by no means I'm not out on Mark Andrews. All I'm saying is out of
All I
Jags
will
offense,
caveat there is,
Evan
I'll
Engram's not
caveat
what I
that
want.
by that's in a league where you are desperate for a tight end of any starting caliber. So,
Well,
that
yeah,
is it.
yeah. Yeah, but I didn't ask you for trade McBride, did I?
Because you know you wouldn't be.
You wouldn't have got him from Pete.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. What are your thoughts on ETN dropping to 10 there, H?
I kind of agree with it a little bit. I think. I mean, we said it last year. Well, I said it last year. I thought he was going to have a really good year. I didn't expect him to end up as RB3. Like, I thought he was going to be better. I didn't expect that. When I look at some of the running backs this year, there's a lot more that I'm kind of higher on than ETN. So I would say it's about right, if not maybe a little bit less. But he's still a solid running back choice. He proved last year he was kind of a 3-down back. We don't know, obviously, with your mate from last year that you were well high on and told me he was going to take over the backfield. Bigsby. Like, we don't know if he's going to be a little bit more involved in year 2. We didn't see anything to kind of do it, but I think he's about right. If not, somewhere between like the 10 to 12 region would be fine.
I've picked up Tank Bigsby in a few leagues, and for no other reason that just taking some of the workload off ETN. And I feel like when you go back and watch, or when you go back and look at what happened with Bigsby last year, they sort of started off and went, yeah, we're going to give you the ball. And then he drops it countless times. He drops it about 4 times. So, and then they went, no, we're not going to give you the ball anymore. And I just feel like, I don't know, if he has a good summer and a good pre-season, they might go, do you know what, we'll give you, and then it's all up to him then whether he can actually hold on to the ball or not, which seems pretty important for a running back. But I've just got a feeling there's an opportunity. I think they want it to happen, but I think with a lot of these, you get a lot of this talk in the summer, and we talked about it last year. It's like, yeah, we want to take the load off it. We'll say it about McCaffrey at some point. It's like, but as soon as the games start and it's 17 all going into the fourth quarter, and then they're giving the ball, they're not going to give it to Bigsby, or they're going to get ETN back on the field. So I think there's an opportunity there, and I have been picking him up in a few best ball leagues because I think he could shine through, because it doesn't really look like there's anyone else there, and they didn't draft anyone else, so that suggests that they trust him at least as a backup.
Yeah.
We're doing this the other way around to the way we did the other. So let's talk quarterback.
Criminally low.
17. There's just no way that if he plays the full season, he finishes as low as 17. I'm not
criminally low.
I think this is purely people still judging him on, because he played injured at the back end of last year, and he didn't play well. And people are thinking he's going to come into this season and still be playing as badly as he did last season with the same injury. And it's not going to happen. There's no way. I mean, I'm not his biggest fan, but he's not QB 17.
No, and I think this is it. Look, you sort of look at the stats. Last year he finished as QB 13 after having a bad sort of last month of the season, last 6 weeks of the season, and he still managed to finish as QB 13. So you're like, where's 17 come from? How are there 16 quarterbacks? And in terms of fantasy, I think it's quite a strong year or at least the outlook is quite strong. You've got quite a few quarterbacks coming back from injuries. You've got a couple of new quarterbacks who've got the potential to come into the league, and you've got second-year quarterbacks like Richardson and Stroud, who everyone's expecting to take a second, who's expecting to push on in Stroud's, at least in Stroud's, with Stroud's side of it. And I just think he's just being pushed down because everyone's just got a little bit of fatigue on his name, and he hasn't, he came in as his big number one overall, and he just hasn't happened for him. But and I'm not sure how many times I'm going to pick him up in a single quarterback league. But as my backup quarterback, I would have Trevor Lawrence every single day of the week. I would have him in every league I've got as my backup quarterback or my second quarterback. I'm more than happy with that.
Well, yeah, because the intention is, when you take a backup quarterback, the intention is if all things go well during your season, he plays one game.
Yeah.
Because your QB1, whoever it is, balls out, and the only time you don't play him in a single QB league is his bye week.
Yeah.
So there's no reason to not have Trevor Lawrence as your QB2.
No, and if he goes on a bit of a hot streak, then you switch him in, and your first quarterback's not working. So I looked at the line on his passing yards. They've got the line as his passing yards of 3,800. And I know you've got to work into this a little bit of, well, if he gets injured, he's clearly not going to get to 3,800 yards. But last year he hit 4,000, and the year before that he hit 4,100. So I was like, that might be my first prop of the year. That I cannot see a world, barring injury, that Trevor Lawrence doesn't throw over 3,800 yards.
Yeah, like if you look at his stats, I mean, granted, he isn't the and we've mentioned this a few times on the pod, like he's probably not what we were expecting. We expected this new, like, Andrew Luck, we expected this new Joe Burrow, whatever you want to call him. Like, we expected an absolute superstar, and it's not quite happened for him yet. But if you look at what's been around him, he's not really had anything elite around him. And I know he had a fairly good running game last year. He had, there's only so much that a quarterback can do. Now, it's QB 17 in fantasy football for a guy who was QB 6 last year ish, give or take a bit. Like, that seems massively low. And then you have a look at the quarterbacks that are around him. So Jaden Daniels, who has never thrown a ball in the NFL, so we don't know what he's like. You've got Goff, Tua, Purdy, Caleb Williams. There's Herbert as well. Like, I mean, I'm high on Herbert. We know that. Like, we've seen that in a couple of the drafts that we've done. But I'm not considering Trevor Lawrence. Like, I'm not considering Trevor Lawrence over a lot of those quarterbacks.
Yeah, I think he's got a very good chance. How do you feel about the Jags overall then before we finish up? Got to finish 9-8 last year. How did you stat them out, Ian, when you were doing every game?
I've started them out. They finish 8-9 and don't make the playoffs.
Okay.
The 9 losses are to the Dolphins, Browns, Bills, Texans, Packers, Eagles, Lions, Jets, and Colts.
Okay. Right. Let's move on to the greatest team in the NFL, the Colts.
We're doing the AFC North.
Eh?
We're doing the AFC North now.
The Colts finished third in 2023. They were 20 minutes away from they were one drive away from the playoffs until CJ Stroud made them pay. They finished 9-8, which was enough for third place in the AFC South, an improvement on 4-12 the previous year. The bookies have got us at 8.5 wins, but with the odds leading slightly under, so more 8 than 9, and third favourites at the division for 16-5, so just a little over 3-1, which feels a little bit high for me. Might have a bit of that. Major ins, Joe Flacco, because it might be needed, and Adonai Mitchell
in a Super Bowl run.
Yeah, and Adonai Mitchell in the draft in the second round. The major outs, Gardner Minshew and Zach Moss, were the only really significant outs I could think of, if you can call them significant outs. The early ADPs, it's a mixed bag for the Colts. So Richardson's going as QB6, which with his rushing potential and the couple of game sample that we saw last year, I think is easily understandable. Jonathan Taylor's going as the RB5, who's obviously got the history of being a number one. Pittman's going as wide receiver 20. Adnai Mitchell's going as the wide receiver 48, and the best we've got at tight end is Jelani Woods, who's going as tight end 39 and is not being drafted on any team in any leagues.
It's not even worth talking about.
No, but I wanted to throw a tight end in there, so that was what I ended up with. I will kick us off because my team. I'm hopefully optimistic as we currently sit here in the beginning of June, and I think I've said this before. I think a lot. I was impressed with last year. I think the fact that we got to 9-8 without Richardson shows what we can do. I like AD Mitchell. I like the fact that they've just gone out and sort of secured everybody else. Like they've got Pittman, they've got a few guys back on defense, and I think there's a good chance that we go 9-8, 10-7, depending on how the division breaks out. We may be challenging in December, but I'm not overly bullish in that I think we'll definitely make the playoffs and go the distance. But I think there's a good chance we can have another winning record.
I slightly disagree with that. I think the Colts are way better than the Jags. I honestly don't understand how the Colts are third favorite in this division, because just from what they did last year alone, they look, especially towards the end, they look a better team. Now, one thing that I've realized, with Gardner Minshew. Now, the one major worry with Anthony Richardson coming out of college was his accuracy with his throwing, but also he got a lot of injuries, and that continued in the NFL. I want to see him kind of protect himself a little bit more this year, and if he does that, the Colts will be right up there this year. There's no doubt in my mind. And to be fair, with Richardson at QB6 at fantasy, it's a risk, but from the 2.5 games that we saw him last year, it's probably a risk worth taking if you can get Trevor Lawrence as your backup quarterback, for instance. Like, it's well worth that risk.
The one thing I'd say about Richardson, and I would have said this when we were talking about the Texans, is if I'm on the board and the top 4 quarterbacks have gone, and you gave me a choice of Stroud or Richardson, I'd go Richardson. And it's not because I think he will finish better, and it's not because I think he's a better player. It's just because I think his ceiling's higher. I think the risk factor is higher, but I think when we've just talked about the fact that I can pick up Trevor Lawrence in probably the last round as my backup quarterback, I'd rather take a chance on Anthony Richardson, being the QB1 on the season and having 17 games like we saw him have two last year. And then if he gets injured or it doesn't work, flipping to Trevor Lawrence, then just sticking with CJ Stroud, who feels like he's going to finish as the QB8 and have a really solid, uninspiring season. The one thing that I think has been missed about last year and the start, and I don't know whether this will make a difference, is we didn't have Jonathan Taylor. And
I've said this.
I wonder whether, to start this year with Jonathan Taylor fit and raring to go, whether he will protect himself a little bit more, because they'll be going, just give the ball to Taylor. It's like, so the couple of the injuries he got was like running it in from the 3-yard line. It's like, we've said this about the Bills for years. You don't do that, Josh Allen, and he does it anyway. But it's like I can see Shane Steichen going, we don't need you to do that. Just give the ball to Taylor 3 times and we'll punch it in. And I think maybe we can still use him. He can still be a threat, but you kind of want him to be faking it and then running off to an empty end zone on the other way, because they're all expecting Taylor to run it, as opposed to everyone expecting him to come running it, and then they're all going to target that shoulder of his. So
yeah.
Just on Taylor, I've realised from doing a few drafts that I've done, I'm very much in on Jonathan Taylor this year. Like, I've done 4 drafts so far, and I've drafted Taylor in each one. And I've looked at my running back room and gone, yeah, that's a good running back room. And Taylor was RB1 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, wasn't it? I think
3 now. It was Josh Jacobs the year before last.
Josh Jacobs, sorry, yeah. But Taylor didn't start well last year, but he didn't have a preseason. He didn't have that building the fitness up. Yeah. So he is a player that you can look at and go, yeah, I'll take a punt on him this year. comes in at RB5. If he's sat there, the ones behind him are Saquon Barkley and Karen Williams. I'm going to take my chance on Taylor because Saquon, that tush push kills it, or potentially is going to kill more touchdowns for Saquon this year. And with Kyron Williams, they've obviously taken Blake Corum this year. I'd rather stick with Jonathan Taylor. And I'll be honest, I get the hype behind Achan. I'm not there with him for a redraft league this year. I'd need to see a full season of him being RB1 for me to take him around Jonathan Taylor. It's for me, Taylor at 5, RB5, sorry, is absolutely 100% where he should be. Maybe Saquon you can take because he is that good, but
I do agree with you, Eric. I think Taylor over Saquon, but I don't think we're going to see the tush push as much this year.
No, I agree. I agree.
Kelsey's gone. He was a main part of it, and the Bucks figured out last year how to shut it down in the playoffs. And I think if the Bucks can figure it out, I'm pretty sure they'll share the secret with the rest of the league, and they'll tell everyone else.
It does help having a 380-pound Vita Vea just standing there. Like it would be like hitting a brick wall. That.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
But to be like when
you are right.
When the Bucks figured it out in the playoffs, I was like, finally, it's not working because it was one of the most annoying things in the NFL.
I think the thing with that is, it's like I don't mind it from the one. It got out of hand last year when they were like, oh, well, we were at the 5, so we'll just run the tush push 3 times and then we know we'll get it in. It's like you need someone to be able to, like if defenses can't stop it from the 5-yard line, we've got an issue. Like if they're on the 1, most teams score when they're on the 1 anyway. So whether you do it via a tush push or running it in or a fake or whatever, is if you get to the 1, and they had a lot of times somebody would get to like Swift or someone would get to the 1 and fall down. So I haven't got any issue with that. I have an issue with them running it 3 times from the 5 or 6 yard line. But moving on to wide receivers, Michael Pittman at wide receiver 20 feels about right, I think.
No, that's way too
low.
No,
he should be. I could not agree more. Ian. He's a wide receiver
way
1.
Too low for me.
I know, but
he's a wide receiver 1 with a quarterback. And last year, what did he finish? Wide receiver 16 last year. I'd be taking a chance. You look at, this is one of the things that I always do.
I'm saying at least top 15, at least.
Yeah,
probably top 12.
See, when I look at the list, there's a few people ahead. There's a few people who are going ahead of him that I wouldn't take ahead of him, and namely Malik Neighbors is at 19. Deebo Samuel's at 18, DJ Moore's at 17, Mike Evans is at 16, and then you've got the 2 Texans that we've already talked about. So I get that, but I also think when you look at who's going below him, Jalen Waddle, Cooper Kupp, Devontae Smith, DK Metcalf, Tank Dell, like it's a strong. The league is strong with wide receivers at the moment.
I'm just going to stop you there, Pete. Right, I have to say this, right. What's Jalen Waddle, Cooper Kupp, Devontae Smith all got in common? The wide receiver 2 in the team. What's Michael Pittman? Wide receiver 1.
It doesn't matter.
Granted, we don't know what Anodyne Mitchell is at the minute. We don't, and the only one that is a wide receiver 1 above Pittman is probably Neighbors because there's nothing else really at the Giants. I would be taking Pittman over Neighbors, over Samuel, and over DJ Moore. As a minimum, I'd consider Mike Evans, but Mike Evans is at some point Mike Evans cannot go 1,000 yards. Like at some point it has to happen. I'd consider Mike Evans, but I'd probably take Pittman over Evans purely because the Bucs have lost their offensive coordinator. I'm high on Pittman, and I think he's way too low at 20. I agree with you.
Yeah. I've no major issue with it. I do think the whole he's their wide receiver 1 is not an argument. Deontay Johnson is the Carolina Panthers wide receiver 1. You're not taking him over Jalen Waddle. So like
Yeah, no, I
It's the same
understand that,
argument,
but
same argument.
with
If the volume's not there,
yeah,
it
but
doesn't matter.
yeah, but the argument is with Pittman, he has proven it. He played with a backup quarterback last year and finished as wide receiver 16. And he's another year in the Shane Steichen system. And what we know about Shane Steichen is he's an offensive-minded genius. Like I'm massively high on Pittman. I really am.
Yeah, I don't have any issue with that.
I do
Yeah,
just
I'm
need
with
to
you,
quickly run and grab my phone charger, so I'll let you two talk for a second.
I think,
Sorry, lads.
I think AD Mitchell's a decent gamble at 48. I don't think there's enough there. I think he's a good dynasty ad. I think he might be a good best ball ad. I'm not sure. I'll be picking him up in many redraft leagues. I'm not sure many people. Well,
Yeah, I mean,
deeper redrafts than the one we play might be picking him up.
I mean, given the lack of depth you've got at receiver and tight end, he's someone I'd be interested in picking up, and I probably wouldn't even put him in a taxi spot.
It depends how many rookies you've got.
It does depend on how many rookies you take, but it's someone I would consider starting from the off because he's going to have the opportunity from day one.
Yeah. I think, like I say, I mean,
He's-
with all those things, it depends on what your team looks like. But I think he's a good shout in dynasty. I think
Yeah,
he could be good.
yeah.
And like I say, I think the tight end point is worth making because we haven't got an awful lot of targets. I think we're going to run the ball a lot with Taylor and Richardson, but then it's Pittman and nothing else. I mean, Josh Downs was all right. There's another lad whose name has just completely jumped out of my head, so that shows you how much of an impact he's making on me. So go on,
Alex
before we
Pierce.
move on. Alec Pierce, thank you. Before we move on, how have you got the Colts going?
10-7.
10-7, second in the division.
Second in the division. However, you don't make the playoffs.
We don't make the playoffs at 10-7. That seems ridiculous.
No, you don't.
Seems really harsh.
Yeah, there's a lot of yeah. So far, everyone's getting a lot of wins. I'm looking forward to the final.
Coming on to the Titans now, aren't we?
I'm looking forward to the final quarter. Titans, they finished 4th in the division last year with a record of 6-11, which is actually slightly better than I remember them having, but they had a slightly better finish than I think most people remember. The bookies have got them at 6.5 wins, so over under a 6.5, and the odds are leaning on the unders, so they're expecting them to have 6 or less. They are 4th favourites to the division, but if you fancy them, you can get them at 9-1. They've got a couple of major ins in Tony Pollard and the aforementioned Calvin Ridley. They're one big out though.
Tyler Boyd.
And Tyler Boyd, sorry. Their one big out though was Derrick Henry, which is clearly going to be a miss. You are not having to pay very high prices for any Titans if you fancy them on your team this year. The early ADPs, we've got Will Levis at QB 25, Tony Pollard at RB 23, Tajay Spears at RB 35, Ridley's highest wide receiver at 40, next to Hopkins at 41, and I can never say his name. Okonkwo is the tight end 23.
Chig
Okonkwo. I'm just going to call him Chig. That's what I should have put on the thing. Just call him Chig. Chig as the tight end 23. I don't even really know where to start with the Titans. I think we're going to struggle to fill 15 minutes of chats. We might even draw a line under this early. Anything you want to say, Ian, before we get into it?
I think the Titans are going to be an absolute dumpster fire this year.
I tell you what, before we get into the ADPs and everything else, why don't you tell us why don't you tell us your outlook for the season for the Titans?
1-16.
Wow.
You should be smashing the unders at 6.5.
They only win one game, and it's at home to the Patriots.
1-16.
But to be fair, their schedule is pretty difficult as well, though. They got the Bears away, the Jets, Packers, Dolphins, Colts, Bills, Lions, Chargers, Vikings, Texans, Commanders, Jags, Bengals, Colts, Jags, Texans. Where are they getting more than one win from? Other than maybe the Commanders.
I mean, they will, because it's the NFL and that's how it works. But I see your point. I mean, on that basis, and I also think that this is. I don't think anyone could. I think you would struggle to find even Titans fans who would say that they're not the fourth strongest, if you want to put it that way, or the least strongest team in the division. Which they,
Yeah.
there's always been one team in the AFC South that's kind of been poor, and I don't like if it's not the Titans, there isn't one. So I think they are the whipping boys, and so the division games are difficult, and you've just gone through some of the others. So yeah, I think I'm leaning under 6.5 wins for the Titans.
Yeah, our schedule is tough. I mean, I could potentially give them a second win, but it's away at the Commanders. I think the Commanders are stronger than them this year.
I think the interesting thing with the Titans is so much of it revolves around Will Levis and how good he turns out to be, because I was actually quite surprised that, I mean, he had that one, he came in, had the first game, threw four touchdown passes, and then, I mean, I don't think he threw four the rest of the way. I don't know how many games he played, but he just didn't seem to follow that up. And off the back of that, they've kind of gone, yeah, we're all in. I'm like, well, that's bold. And I really don't see it. I really don't see it. They've given him a few more weapons. Ridley, Hopkins, Boyd, even Chig's quite a good tight end. Like he's not short of weapons. I just don't see it I just don't see him as a quarterback. I can't see it happening. H?
No, I think this year is going to be like
Go on, Ian. Sorry, mate.
I think this year's going to be like it's a year where they just try and gel it all together. I think Will Levis's first year, it was in and out of the team. It was interrupted, and this is going to be what I'm hoping it's going to be for the Titans. Is the coaches just go out there and say, right, just go and play, forget about the result, just go and play. Which it worked well for the Titans. To take it back, football's the winner today, guys. Go out there.
NFL is the winner. You're right, man.
Because I like Will Levis. Aside from, if you take away his eating and drinking habits, I just quite like why.
I don't know whether that's swaying my opinion on him slightly. Because just keep every time someone says Will Levis, I just get that vision of him eating a banana without taking the skin off it. So I don't know.
I do want him to do well. I like his character. I like his attitude. I just don't think this is the year, especially given the schedule that the NFL's handed them. I think this year it could be just go out there, have fun, see what we can do, try and gel as a team, and then we'll make a play for it next year.
Have you seen his tape?
Well, would you put it? Hang on, what's doing here now?
You've not seen this? Apparently, he had a tape.
No.
Him and his girlfriend's tape got leaked. I've not watched it. I've not seen it. I saw him. I saw one of the best things I've ever seen on Twitter. Was a Jags fan and a Titans fan arguing under this story, and the Jags fan was basically going, "Your QB only lasts 40 seconds," and the Titans fan come back was, "Trevor Lawrence wouldn't last 30, mate." So that's like Twitter is absolutely brilliant sometimes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's me sorted for the rest of the evening now.
I haven't seen it, but I'm sure you could probably get your hands on it somewhere.
Phrasing.
H. Levis, you in or you're out?
So on the Titans as a whole, I thought they had a fairly good off-season, but their schedule has killed them, and I completely agree with what Ian has said. But if you look at especially defensively, like they bring in two of the best corners from last year in Awuzie and Snead, but they're going against teams where they're going to have to score a lot of points, and I think it does go on Levis. Now, I'm probably a little bit more in on Levis than like you two. But then I look at who's around him in ADP, and I'm like, I'm probably not going to take him. It's a bit of a funny one because I do think he will be better.
I mean, he's the QB 25. I don't think anybody on this podcast. I mean, the leagues we play in don't go deep.
Yeah, super flex you would, but
I mean,
no.
you like
Yeah.
When we do the JTT best ball in a month's time, one of us will end up taking him because every QB gets taken. We're doing, it's 10 teams. We're doing 28, 30 rounds or something. So every QB is going to get taken. But in a redraft, or in any of the redraft leagues, even in some of the dynasty leagues, but even in the redraft league, he's not getting taken. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah. So in our home leagues, when we do our live drafts, in both of our home leagues, if anyone takes Levis, they have to eat a banana with the skin on. That is the forfeit. if you are that desperate that you're drafting Will Levis in an 8-team league, or if you pick him up during the season, that is your forfeit.
Hold on. If he's good during the season, there's an argument that a few people may take him. But just on that, if it's a 1QB league and you've got Trevor Lawrence at quarterback 17, I'm going to take my chance on Lawrence over Levis. It's not even a debate that.
He's clearly a waiver wire pickup at best.
Yeah.
I know what you're saying, Ian, about their season, and they're just like saying going out there and play. But I think their off season's been odd in that you can kind of go, they're building for the future. But Calvin Ridley's what, 29? Tony Pollard's not young. They're odd. They are odd signings, I think, if you are trying to build for the future. Now I realise even if you're building for the future, you've got to put a team out there, and when Sunday comes. But the wide receiver room is Calvin Ridley and Hopkins and Boyd. None of them are none of them can remember being in college anymore. Like, it's all a long time ago. They've got a lot of work to do there. It just feels like they don't really have much direction and they don't really know where they're going. And if I was their new head coach, I'd be a little bit worried.
No, but if you are looking at taking receivers from the Titans, I do think, I know because he's just like the Bengals and I'm big on Boyd, I think he might see a lot of volume at the Titans, working a lot underneath while D-Hop and Ridley stretch the field. I think Tyler Boyd's going to get a load of checkdowns.
I didn't include Boyd because he was so low down on the ADP that I couldn't even find him.
Yes. Yeah.
Mate, if you want Tyler Boyd, it doesn't matter what league you're in, you can pick him up. So he is going to be available.
I'll get him. I'm just saying, I think he'll have a better year than people potentially think he will.
I think the fact that Ridley and Hopkins are back to back in ADP at 40 and 41 tells you everything you need to know about the Titans, in that nobody's convinced by Levis, no one's convinced by the Titans, and nobody really knows who's going to be the main target there. And if anything, they're probably just going to spread it around a little bit. The little bit that's there, they'll spread around. And I can't see me having any Titans on my team at any point this year, if I'm perfectly honest.
Yeah, I think
the one place that might change is running back.
Sorry.
What do we think about Tony Pollard?
Tony Pollard, would you, or Tajay Spears? I don't know
which to go with.
No, I wouldn't know which one to go with. Who's going to be RB1? Tajay Spears is between the tackles. Tony Pollard's running outside. Depends on the scheme. Whether they're going to go pass heavy. I'd probably stay away from both of them.
Yeah.
I think if you're going to pick up one, you've kind of got to pick up the other, because it sounds stupid, but we don't know who the RB1 is going to be. There's a possibility it could be Spears, because Spears had quite a nice sort of finish to the season. But we also know that Pollard isn't an RB1. So I think with them, it's too big of a risk. And if you look at some of the running backs that are around them in terms of ADP, you've got Swift, Stevenson, you've got Mostert, Najee Harris, Zamir White. It's probably safer options going elsewhere, to be honest, than Tony Pollard at 23.
Yeah, definitely.
And yeah, so it's best ball. They're probably great picks, but not for a redraft league.
Let's switch the situation, the conversation on Pollard. Then his over/unders rushing touchdowns is 5.5 on Bet365. Last year, despite not having a great year, he got to 6. The year before, he got to 9 when he was sharing the backfield with Zeke. Different team, different situation. How do we feel? Is that something you'd be thinking, oh, I might have a bit of money on that? 5.5?
I think I'd take the under. I don't think they're getting anywhere near the red zone enough times for him to do it.
Okay.
The only thing that I would say is, the only thing that I would say is because he's back in a timeshare, it wouldn't surprise me to see Pollard quite high, because I think he's better. I've said this many a time, like I think he's better in a 1-2 combo, especially because he's coming in fresher. I don't see him as an RB1, but I'm looking at their schedule. I don't see it.
I mean, the more I looked into this, the more I just came to the conclusion that I was completely out on the Titans in every element of it. I was like, even looking at the over/unders, I was like, don't want anything to do with that. Tony Pollard rushing touchdown either way. He could easily get to 5.5's not high enough for me to bet the unders, and he could easily fall under it, but he could easily get over it. And Will Levis, his passing yards was 3.5, basically 3,500, and I was like, yeah, I don't want anything to do with that either. I could see him getting there. I could see him falling short. So I basically won't be doing anything with the Titans until 2025. So we'll pick this conversation up there. I'm going to move us on then. So Ian, you've already given us the 1 through 4 for this year. It's going to be Texans, Colts, Jags, Titans, according to your extensive research. H, do you disagree? I'm guessing you disagree with that based on what you said about the Colts.
I can see the Colts winning it. I can see the Texans winning it. I think it's between them. I think 3-4 is Jags Titans. I completely agree with that. I'd go Texans because they're my team though. So yeah, I kind of agree with Ian on it. But it wouldn't surprise me to see the Colts win the division this year, to be fair.
I'm pretty similar. I mean, if we were sitting here putting money on it, I'd go Colts because I feel like I have to. If my mortgage depended on it, I think the safe bet is the Texans. I think they will come out, and the Texans will come out and have to get to 10 or 11 wins, and it's just a case of whether anybody can stick with them. I think we've got the ability to stick with them. I also think the Jags will have a slightly better season than maybe Ian's predicting, and I think you're predicting. I think the whole thing could come down to the last couple of weeks between all three teams again, if I'm honest. And
I agree with it. I just don't see. I do think the Jags are not a bad team. I don't think they're quite at the Colts and the Texans level.
Yeah, maybe.
I do think they'll be. I think they'll be in the hunt, but I don't think they'll make it.
Okay. That was the AFC South.
Yeah, nice one.
Good down.
Anything to add before we wrap it up?
Oh no, not for me, no.
No. Hopefully you've enjoyed that little summary we've just done of the AFC South. We tune in next time where we will be going through the NFC South, and then we'll be switching back to the AFC. Across the course of this month, we will be doing all 8 divisions. So look out for them on YouTube, on whichever podcast system you use. Subscribe to our socials at JMD Pod, and please share, and let's help us grow this podcast as we go into 2024 season.
Yes, please do, guys. Cheers.